Hello everyone and welcome back to Rules as Written Character Builds. My name is Zach and on this channel I make character builds for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, trying to strike a balance between theme and combat capability. Today we're going to be making a Forged Cleric and building towards some decent melee damage and a little bit of area of effect damage. I've been doing a lot of multi-classes lately, so I want to switch things up and go for a nice, simple, single class build. Additionally, I had mentioned before how much of a fan I am of the new format for the Smite Spells. I don't mean Divine Smite. I know that used to be a feature, now it's a spell. Not that, I'm talking about Searing Smite, Thunderous Smite, Wrathful Smite, all those ones. They no longer need to be cast ahead of time. You can cast them when you hit. Additionally, they no longer require concentration. This was the biggest hang up on using them for a lot of people. When you had to cast them ahead of time, you couldn't use your concentration for anything else, like a Shield of Faith, a Divine Favor, a Spirit Shroud, and if you missed the attack and then you lost concentration before your next turn, it was a waste of a spell slot. So they're much better now. And you would think that if I wanted to do a single class build and I wanted to take advantage of the new Smite spells, I would go for Paladin, but no. Forged Cleric actually gets access to Searing Smite on their spell list, so we're going to be making a Forged Cleric. I wanted to make the theme here a Fire Giant Smith, using the Goliath species and the Forged Cleric domain to recreate that masterful smithing that Fire Giants are known for. We're also going to get a pretty decent damaging melee attack. Even though we're not getting extra attack, I think you're still going to respect the amount of damage that we can put out in melee, so check this out. Let's dive into the build. For our species, like I said, we're going with Goliath. They get extra movement speed, extra carrying capacity, and starting at 5th level, they have the ability to turn large once per day. That's how we're going to achieve our giant aesthetic. It'll be upwards of 15 feet tall, striding across the battlefield. Hello, kitty cat. This is Adele. I'm sure you've all seen her before. She makes cameos in these videos. Our main feature that mechanically that we're getting from Goliath is called Giant Ancestry. You choose one of the giant types. For this one, of course, we're choosing Fire Giant, which is going to give us Fire's Burn. This lets us add 1d10 fire damage to an attack when we hit. Proficiency bonus times per long rest. Now, for our ability scores, we want a good Wisdom, Strength, and Constitution for spellcasting, melee attack, and hit points. So we're going to go with a pretty extreme ability score spread here. Strength of 15, Dexterity of 8, Constitution of 14, Intelligence of 10, Wisdom of 15, Charisma of 8. We're going to be grabbing the Clan Crafter background, placing +2 into our Wisdom and +1 into our Strength. For our Origin feat, grab Magic Initiate Wizard and choose Wisdom for your spellcasting modifier. For the 2 cantrips, take Fire Bolt and Green Flame Blade. So everybody knows and loves the Blade cantrips. Green Flame Blade does extra fire damage to a second target. Then at levels 5, 11, and 17, the damage to both the attack's target and the second target increases by 1d8 fire damage. Firebolt is so we have a little bit of range damage. Every character needs some sort of ranged option, so this is going to be that for us. And for our first level spell, just pick up Burning Hands. This is our very first area of effect spell. Also, the spell does scale with higher spell slots, so we'll be able to cast it throughout our character's career to better and better of effect. For this build, we're going to be wearing heavy armor and wielding martial weapons and a shield. We won't be taking any weapon masteries, so use whatever one-handed martial melee weapon you want to. I think Warhammer is the best fit for our smith aesthetic. The roadmap here is pretty straightforward. I don't think we need a slide for it. Levels 1 through 20, just Cleric all the way. And at level 1, choose Protector for the heavy armor proficiency and the martial weapon proficiency. Then at level 3, we'll get our Divine Domain, and we're going to be going with the Forge domain. This gives us Blessing of the Forge, which lets us add +1 to a single piece of armor or a single weapon until the end of our long rest. I'd put this on armor. You know, higher AC, you get hit less. You get hit less, you live longer, you make more attacks, you deal more damage. I usually, I prioritize defense, but if you want to bonk harder or if you're worried about missing your attacks, you can go ahead and put it on your weapon. Combine this with the Shield of Faith spell and an actual shield, and we can be rocking a 21 armor class at level 3 with just chainmail. Or you could always just, use this Blessing of the Forge on one of your marshals, like your fighter or your barbarian, to get a little bit of brownie points. This is our first magical smithing feature, and I like the flavor of improving some existing gear just because of how good of a smith we are. Speaking of smithing, our subclass Channel Divinity, Artisan's Blessing, comes online at 3rd level as well. This basically lets us take all the scrap, treasure, and gold that we find adventuring, and over the course of 1 hour, we can turn it into another object of equal value. The value cap here is 100 gold, so no making plate armor, but you can still make basically any weapon, tool, or even some of the cheaper armors like chainmail, scale mail, or a chain shirt. You really got to be creative with this one. I spent some time on Reddit reading about how other people use this, And there was a whole lot of really cool stuff. Everything from converting scrap gear into platinum bars to conserve carry capacity, because platinum is more valuable than, say, iron. So you take a full suit of iron armor, turn it into one platinum bar, it's going to weigh a lot less. I even saw somebody say that you could use this to get out of prison by converting the bars of the prison into weapons for your party. So then over the course of an hour, you melt the bars of the prison, arm up your party, and then just walk right out. That one might be hard to pull off depending on the guard rotation, but if you can find a time to do it, that would be really, really cool. So basically, this feature is pretty much as good as you make it. It doesn't specifically hurt or heal anybody, but if you think creatively, it can get your party out of some pickles, or at least make looting the dungeon a lot easier. But what I really wanted from this subclass was the Searing Smite Spell. Just like the other Smite spells, we cast this as a bonus action when we hit with an attack. This one adds 1d6 fire damage to the attack, and an extra 1d6 fire damage at the beginning of the target's turn. After that damage, it makes a con save. If it passes, then the effect ends. If not, the effect continues. We don't have another bonus action in this build, besides, maybe Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, and we have plenty of spell slots as a Cleric, so plan to cast this nearly every turn in important fights throughout the adventuring day. It's nice that the 1d6 continual damage happens before the saving throw, so we're always guaranteed at least one turn of damage over time with this spell. All of the damage of this spell increases by 1d6 for each spell slot level above first, and at this point we already have second level spell slots, so we can do some mega hits, hitting with 2d6 extra fire damage, and another 2d6 fire damage on the creature's next turn, continuing and continuing if they fail that save. Plus, if we throw our Goliath Fire Ancestry feature on here, we can potentially deal 1d8 weapon damage, plus 2d6 and 1d10 fire damage, plus 3 on a single hit. Not bad for level 3. I also want to shout out the Continual Flame spell real quick. For the cost of 50 gold pieces of ruby dust, we can permanently cover an object in magical fire. It doesn't do any damage, but carrying around a flaming hammer or wearing flaming armor is pretty on theme for us. For our level 4 ability score improvement, we're going to be taking the Elemental Adept feat. Choose one of the following damage types: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. Spells you cast ignore resistance to the damage of the chosen type. In addition, when you roll spell damage of that type, you can treat any 1 on a damage die as a 2. Increase your wisdom by +1 with this feat to 18, and choose fire for the elemental type. So now all of our fire damage is going to be ignoring resistance, which is really great, and we can no longer roll 1s. Level 5 increases the damage of our green Flameblade cantrip, so now deals an additional 1d8 fire to the target and 1d8 fire to the secondary target. We also get 3rd level spell slots level 5. Our next subclass feature comes at level 6, Soul of the Forge. Starting at 6th level, your Mastery of the Forge grants you special abilities. You gain resistance to fire damage. While wearing heavy armor, you gain a +1 bonus to armor class. Fire resistance is pretty nice. It's fitting since we are a fire giant. Now our fire spells ignore resistance, and we have resistance to the fire damage. I wonder how that would work if we got caught in one of our own area of effects. Somebody let me know in the comments down below. I think probably we would take full damage because our spells ignore resistance, but how would you rule that? Let me know. Alright, also that additional +1 to armor class means we'll now have an armor class of 22 if we're wearing chainmail, or, at this point, level 6, we might even have plate. That'd be a massive 24 armor class. We then get the Fabricate and the Wall of Fire spells at level 7. Fabricate is basically our Artisan's Blessing feature, but with no gold cap limit. So we can finally craft ourselves that perfect suit of plate mail armor. Or we can use any other raw material to make things, such as a bridge out of wood, a rope out of some clothes, anything like that. Wall of Fire is a great area of effect fire spell. It deals 5d8 damage within its area of effect, or to any creature who ends their turn within 10 feet of the wall. It also lasts for a minute. Even better, we can choose one side of the wall that deals no fire damage to creatures within 10 feet of it, so we can keep our party safe on one side. Level 7 also gets us the Cleric feature, Blessed Strikes. We're going to choose Divine Strike to add 1d8 radiant damage to one melee attack per turn. This, along with our 4th level spell slots, means that we can Searing Smite / Green Flame Blade / Fire's Burn on a single attack for 3d8, 46, and 1d10 plus 3. And that Green Flame Blade is also dealing 1d8 plus 4 damage to a second target. Now for our second ability score increase at level 8, we're going to bump our strength up to 18 to match our wisdom. Our next fire feature comes in at level 9 with the Cleric spell Flame Strike. This 5th level spell creates a 10-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder of divine flame, which crashes down, dealing 5d6 radiant and 5d6 fire damage to all creatures within the area. This is instantaneous, it's not a concentration spell, so we can totally create a wall of fire, locking our enemies in, and then on the next turn we can Flame Strike into that cage, so we create like a kiln on the battlefield that anybody trapped in there is just taking damage on their turn and getting flame striked on your turn. And all that damage, aside from the Radiant, is ignoring resistance thanks to our Elemental Adept. So, I mean, look at that. We are level 9 right now, and we have access to giant AoE fire damage, huge fire damage melee attacks, a 24 armor class. This is what we wanted here. But it's going to get better. Let's keep on going. At character level 11, our green flame blade damage goes up. Now it's dealing 2d8 extra fire damage to the main target and 2d8 plus 4 damage to the second target. With these brand new 6th level spell slots, we can pump that Searing Smite up again to make it deal 66 fire damage. For our level 12 ability score improvement, take the Warcaster feat to increase our wisdom up to 19. The Warcaster feat gives some great benefits. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws you make to maintain concentration. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack from you, you can replace the attack with the casting of a spell. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. You can perform the somatic components of spells even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about the new reading of Warcaster in the 2024 Player's Handbook. If you haven't, I'll briefly summarize it. So opportunity attacks no longer specify that the target must be hostile to you, so you can theoretically opportunity attack your allies if they pass through your reach. Combine this with Warcaster, which lets you swap an opportunity attack for the casting of a spell that targets the triggering creature. So you can, therefore, with this reading, cast beneficial spells onto your allies as a reaction when they leave your reach, like Haste, Shield of Faith, or even something like Cure Wounds to heal them a little bit. I don't really think I'd play it this way. It's pretty gamey, and it's a bit weird to justify when the combo originates from something called an opportunity attack. That being said, I don't think it's as broken as the reputation for it is. It burns resources crazy fast. If you're a 5th level wizard with Warcaster and you cast Haste on the Barbarian on their turn as they pass through your reach, sure, they're going to get the extra attack, they're going to get the +2 to armor class, and then on your turn, you're going to have your action free to throw out a Fireball. That's a pretty loaded round of combat. I'm not going to say no to that, but that's also 2 3rd level spell slots gone, which is all the 3rd level spell slots that a 5th level caster has. So I strongly believe in the balance created by a long adventuring day, with at least 5 or more encounters where the parties have to think about conserving resources, as opposed to like 1 or 2 encounters per day, where parties can just blow all their spell slots and all their features to just absolutely demolish fights. So as long as the players at your table care about conserving their resources, I don't think this reading of Warcaster is all that bad. That being said, I don't think it was how the feat is intended to work, so I won't be using it that way at my table. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the new Warcaster thing. Let's keep on going with the build. At level 13, we get 7th level spell slots, so we can now use the Firestorm spell. This spell creates a continuous line of 10-foot cubes arranged however you like. A creature in each of the cubes takes 7d10 fire damage. This isn't really that much better than Flame Strike. Flame Strike does 10d6 damage. This one does 7d10 damage, but it is much more free in the area that it affects. Instead of just being a little 10-foot cylinder, it is potentially a 100-foot long, 10-foot wide line. You can lay it however you want as long as it's continuous. You can have it twist through a hallway, you can have it weave through the ranks of a battle so it only hits your enemies, you can have it roll through a forest trail, leaving the wildlife and the trees unharmed, however you want to put it down. That being said, strictly damage-wise, it wouldn't be better than like an upcasted Flame Strike or an upcasted Fireball or something like that. Now, level 14 is going to improve our Divine Strike feature. Now we get to add 2d8 radiant damage to our weapon attacks. And then next at level 16 is another ability score improvement. We're going to max our strength out up to 20 to make sure that those attacks really hit home. Level 17 improves our green flame blade again, so it's at a maximum of 3d8 fire damage on the main target and 3d8 fire damage on the second target. That plus divine strikes means that without even smiting, our melee attacks are dealing 6d8 plus 5 damage. It might be crazy to use a 9th level spell slot on Searing Smite, but if you did, and added Fire Giant Ancestry, I just want to add it all up for you because this is the end, you would be dealing 6d8, 9d6, and 1d10 plus 5 damage to your target with a single attack action. Now, level 17 also gets us our final subclass feature, Saint of Forge and Fire. At 17th level, your blessed affinity with fire and metal becomes more powerful. You gain immunity to fire damage. While wearing heavy armor, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks. We weren't sure how it would look if we got hit with our own fire spells, but now at this level, we know for a fact if we got hit with our own fire spells, even with Elemental Adept, we're taking no damage. Finally, at level 19, we're going to get our Epic Boon, and we're going to take the boon of Spell Recall. Increase your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 30. Whenever you cast a spell with a level 1 through 4 spell slot, roll a d4. If the number rolled is the same as the spell's level, the spell slot isn't expended. So max out your Wisdom to 20. These low-level spell slots possibly coming back is going to be really nice for our Searing Smite, giving us a chance to possibly cast it for free. I mean, it would feel really good to throw out a 4th level Searing Smite, an extra 46 fire damage on our melee attack, and then we roll a 4 on that d4 and it didn't cost us a thing. And yeah, that's the build. So this one's going to play like most of the other melee cleric builds that you'll see out there, but its damage is going to be even better. I think at this point in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, taking a blade cantrip is pretty standard for an optimized melee cleric. However, this is the only cleric subclass that gets a smite spell, so we're going to be able to pump our damage much better than any other cleric. This gives us some really solid burst at low levels, and once we hit higher levels and we have low level spell slots to spare, we can be throwing out a level 1 or 2 smite pretty much every single turn if we want to, especially once we get that boon of Spell Recall and we can potentially be getting those spell slots back. Now, don't forget about the critical hit potential here. We only have 1 attack per turn, but if we do manage to crit, dropping a 6th, 7th, 8th, even 9th level spell slot into that is going to be so much extra fire damage. Now, all of our fire damage here is capable of hitting multiple enemies. You know, Green Flame Blade cleaves, we started with Burning Hands, we eventually get Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, all that stuff. So keep an eye out for bunched up enemies so we can spread our damage out with this build. Most of our theme spells are going to come from our subclass, so you're going to be very free with this build to use your prepared spell list to get all the cleric staples. I'm talking Shield of Faith, Bless, Cure Wounds, Spirit Guardians, so on and so forth. We're going to have a very healthy armor class with this build, so in combat, make sure you get up on the front lines, side by side with your marshals, and just start throwing out fire damage that ignores resistance. Use Green Flame Blade and Divine Strike to pump some solid melee damage as the fight progresses, and look for opportunities to slam heavy damage into a single target with Searing Smite. When the enemies start to group up, hit them with a Burning Hands, or at later levels, hit them with a Flame Strike or a Firestorm. If your party's outnumbered, create a choke point with your Wall of Fire, hold the gap, and just start burning everyone who gets in close. All in all, this is going to be a great build for somebody who likes being a full caster, but still standing in melee and DPSing with the big boys. The fire spells are very flashy and a good way to make your presence known. Going large with our Goliath large form feature is going to pull a lot of attention as well. Just imagine a 15-foot tall, plate armor wearing cleric that is just blasting fire out of their hands, calling fire from the sky, swinging a flaming warhammer. This is going to be a lot of fun. And so yeah, that's everything. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Come back next week for another original character build. We'll be making what I call the Plague Knight, utilizing the Spores Druid and the Battlemaster Fighter to make a melee combatant with a plethora of attacks and piles of additional on-hit damage. I'm really excited for that one because it's actually the character I plan on playing in a D&D campaign I'm going to be starting here in the next month or two. And yeah, thanks everybody for checking out the video, and we'll see you next week.